The Return. Chapter 1. The Disappearance. It was the summer of 1989 when Daniel Morgan vanished. A quiet, reserved 22-year-old, Daniel had gone on a solo hiking trip into the dense Appalachian wilderness near Black Ridge, Pennsylvania. He left on a Friday morning, telling his family he would be back by Sunday evening, but Sunday came and went. By Monday morning, his worried parents reported him missing. The search lasted for weeks. Local authorities, rescue teams, and volunteers combed the mountains, but Daniel was nowhere to be found. No footprints, no campsite, no belongings, just gone. Eventually, the case went cold, and the town moved on, though whispers of what might have happened haunted Black Ridge for decades. Then, on a rainy evening in 2019, exactly 30 years after his disappearance, Daniel came home. Chapter 2. The Return. It was around 9 p.m. when a knock echoed through the quiet suburban home of Claire Morgan, Daniel's older sister. She had long since given up hope, mourning him as dead. So when she opened the door and saw him standing there young, unchanged, exactly as he had been in 1989, her heart nearly stopped. Daniel stood in the dim porch light, his jeans and jacket still the same ones he had worn on the day he left. Not aged, not a day older. His hair was the same length. His skin was unwrinkled. He looked, frozen in time. "Claire?" His voice was soft, confused. Claire staggered back, gripping the doorframe. This isn't possible. "I don't understand," Daniel murmured. "What day is it?" She told him. He stared at her, then at his own hands. "That's impossible," he whispered. "I was just in the woods yesterday." But it wasn't yesterday. It had been 30 years. Chapter 3. The Investigation. The town exploded with curiosity. Daniel became the subject of national news. Scientists and doctors examined him, yet his DNA, fingerprints, and even dental records matched perfectly. There was no logical explanation. Authorities interrogated him. Where had he been? What had happened? But Daniel had no answers. He remembered hiking, finding an old wooden cabin deep in the forest, and knocking on the door. A man answered. He had sharp, piercing eyes but a warm smile. He invited Daniel inside to rest. "I fell asleep," Daniel said, "and when I woke up, I was outside, near the road leading back to town." But that made no sense. 3 decades had passed. Chapter 4. Something is wrong. As days went by, something felt off. Daniel never seemed to sleep. He had no appetite. The family tried to make him eat, but he would only stare at the food, pushing it around his plate. His presence unsettled people. It wasn't just the fact that he hadn't aged, it was the way he moved, the way his eyes lingered too long, how he seemed to be listening to things no one else could hear. And then, the disappearances started. First, it was a local boy, then an elderly woman, then a couple from out of town. They simply vanished just like Daniel had. That's when Claire started watching her brother more closely. One night, unable to sleep, she stepped out of her room and saw Daniel standing at the window, staring out at the dark woods. She called his name. He didn't turn. Instead, he whispered, "He's calling them." Chapter 5. The Cabin. Claire became obsessed. She dug through old maps, researching missing person reports, and eventually found something strange in old legend, passed down for generations, about a cabin that appeared only to those who were lost. Locals called it the waiting place, a place between worlds. Those who entered were said to never return, or return changed. Determined to find the truth, Claire packed supplies and drove to the trail where Daniel had last been seen in 1989. He watched her, silent, but didn't try to stop her. She hiked for hours until, deep in the woods, she saw it. The cabin, old, weathered, hidden by time. Her heart pounded as she stepped onto the creaking porch. The door was slightly open. She pushed it wider and froze. Inside, there were dozens of people. Some were sitting in old wooden chairs. Some were standing. Their faces were blank, their eyes hollow. And among them, she saw her brother, another Daniel. A different Daniel. He looked at her, terrified. "Claire?" he gasped. Then the door slammed shut. Chapter 6. The Truth. The Daniel who had returned to Blackridge was not her brother. It was something else. The real Daniel had been trapped in the cabin for 30 years, caught in an endless loop of time. Every few decades, the cabin let one person go boot, only if they lured someone else inside to take their place. The thing, pretending to be Daniel, had led Claire there. She turned, desperate to escape, but the door was gone. The walls stretched. The floor shifted beneath her feet. The room darkened, shadows creeping toward her. A whisper curled around her ear. "Your turn." Chapter 7. The Final Disappearance. The next morning, Daniel, the other Daniel, packed a bag and left town, just as Claire Morgan was declared missing. A week later, he was spotted in another city. A different name, a different life. He blended in, just as he had done before. Somewhere, deep in the Appalachian wilderness, a new cabin door creaked open, and inside, Claire Morgan sat in the darkness, staring at the door, waiting for the next traveler to arrive. And so, the story falls silent, but only for now, because beyond this screen, another mystery is already unfolding. Another whisper is rising in the darkness. When it calls your name, will you dare to listen? Don't miss the next chilling tale. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. The shadows are waiting, and they always come back for those who wander alone,